Hey everyone, so I finished painting Arcadia Quest and the couple of promos that I owned, and now I'm just going to do a model from Masmorra. So I'm starting with Graybark. Let me know if this video is any use. I don't know how many people actually play Masmorra. Obviously the character's usable with Arcadia Quest. First of all, I'll show the colours that I've used in this with a picture again. I think this time I'll try and type them all into the description below. If that's any use, let me know. And on this video, I'm just going to try something new and have Katherine help commentate, at least at the start. I'm trying to make the video a little bit more interesting, so let us know if that's better or worse. She'll probably only help for about a minute, and then it'll resume normal schedule. So enjoy.
Oh, here he is, having a twirl.
He has a name, and it is Graybark.
Lovely, yep, nice hair. Oh, he looks so cross. Super cross. Oh, what's Ben gonna do now? Oh, cheer him up with some orange! Oh, lovely.
Yeah, we'll be starting with Vallejo's Hot Orange.
Oh, yeah, some orange bits. Is that his belt? Yeah, it's a nice orange belt.
It's not a belt, it's the orange cloth on top of his robe.
Has he got a bag? He's got a little orange bag?
No, he doesn't have a man bag. That's the bottom of the cloth that goes through his belt.
Very nice.
Anyway, so I painted all that with the Army Painter's Regiment brush, trying to get a nice, quick, even base coat on.
What colour's that? Brown. Okay.
It's specifically Vallejo's dark Fleshtone, but any dark brown will do if you've got one available. So I'm painting the underside of his cloth now with the Regiment brush again. So that's the end of Katherine's comments for this video. Just try and get out. Let us know in the comments below whether you hate it or like it, and we'll consider doing it more in the future or ditching it, keeping the tutorials more straight talking with just me telling you what colours I'm using and which brush I'm using. So I'm just finishing off the brown. There's quite a lot on this model and it's quite difficult to reach under his hair, but don't forget you'll be painting everything else after this, so don't be too careful. Just try and get a nice even coat, as you can see there. So next I'm picking up a charred brown, which is an even darker brown. And I'm going to be painting the sort of belt that goes across his chest and the belt that goes around his waist as well, leaving the outer edges of the waist belt painting a lighter brown to show that sort of highlighting, and as it's demoed in the card that you get. So hopefully you can see that there. Starting to come along nicely. Moving on to Vallejo's Beastly Brown. This is one of the lighter ones. And as I just mentioned previously, I'm going to be going for the edges of the belt, his shoulder pads. He's got sort of fur on both shoulders. Being quick and even again as normal. I was asked what I water the paint down with, or what I thin the paint with, and I just do use water. I obviously can't see it on camera, but quite frequently I'm just wetting the brush. I'm not really adding any water to the paint, but I'm just keeping the brush reasonably damp. So now, yep, long awaited, I'm finally doing the belt sides. I also did his staff in that brown. So I'm using my Army Painter's Zombie Skin, which is just a off-white yellowy colour. I'm just doing the straps on his wrists. And he's got a little triangle. I can't even tell what that is in the picture, but it's the same colour as these parts. I'm also going to do the skull in this colour. Oh, he's got claws or teeth. That must be claws. It must be like a bear paw on each shoulder. So I'm just doing the claws in the same colour as well. Making sure to do the same on the opposite side. Next I'm using the Vallejo's Livery green, which is the really bright sort of lime luminous green that comes in the set I've got. And I'm just painting the sort of side of his face, which is shown in the card to be bright green. I can't tell if it's supposed to be light coming off of the staff or if he's got some sort of face paint on. I'm thinking it's face paint in this instance, as the model's got a line down his face to separate the two colours. So I'm just doing that multiple coats here. I think it's taken three little coats there. It's very watery paint, and I was building up the colour. Next is Parasite Brown from Vallejo again. This is an even lighter brown. It's quite a reddy brown. I'm just doing the tip of his staff, which from the character card looked brighter than the rest of the staff. I'm just being very careful. I'm still using the regiment brush though, so no fear still, but being very careful not to get any on the lime green that I've just painted. Next up is the Army Painter's Brainmatter Beige, which is slightly off white, but normal white would probably be fine too. I'm doing his eyes, getting all of his eyeball. Here I'm using my detail brush by the Army Painter as well, smaller than the regiment brush because of the tininess of his eyes. I've picked up Filthy Suit next, which is a medium grey. I'm just doing the outside of those wristbands that he had and his eyebrows very carefully, using the regiment brush still though, because his eyebrows, they're big enough. I just have to be extra careful and trying to use the very tip of the brush and the pointiest parts. Also being very careful along his beard here. His hair's all the same colour as well, so I'm, again, around the bits I've already painted and the small area, I'm just being very careful with the regiment brush, taking my time, getting the undersides of it all as well. So I've moving up to the top of his head, trying to get a nice even coat again, making sure it goes into all the recesses and being a lot quicker. I've speeded up the footage as well. I'm not just painting this quickly, but I'm being a lot quicker in the bits that aren't anywhere near any of the other painted areas. I'm making sure to get the underside of his hair as well. So hopefully you can see it's starting to come along. Base coat's looking decent. So picking up my Claymore blade, my light silver from the, again, the war paint, Army Painter's war paint Zombicide kit thing, but any lightish silver would be fine. Metallic-y. My zombie shader now, so I'm going to move on to shading. My zombie shader is my lightish brown shader, which I use for the skin. And you can see I'm applying it very carefully to his face, trying to get it to pool in the recesses and not on the sort of flat flesh. Doing the same on his arms. And then I'll move on to his hands, trying to get it to pool on his muscle lines and his finger, in between each of his fingers. I'm also going to do all the brown on his staff and the top of his staff. Same shader. I'm going to do down his bare paw shoulder pads. Same. Going to get his wrist straps to make them look like bandages. And do all of his brown robe as well. So you can see that's how it looks while it's wet and still drying. I'm going to use the Survivor shader, which is my black shader. And with this, I always like to do metals with that. I think it gives a really good effect. And I'm going to do his grey hair, getting plenty of this in his hair so it pulls into the recesses in between each strand. Suddenly making it look a lot more 3D, I think you can see. Being very generous with it. Plenty on the underside as well. Not that you can really see it, but if you do manage to glance at it, it looks very dark, like as though it's in shadow. Doing a second layer as well, just to make sure it's evenly pooled. And pooling up, loading his eyes so they pull to the edges to give him that sort of chibi, cartoony black outline of his eyes. So this is my Zombicide Plague shader, which is a dark green shader, which I'm just using to do the green part of him, just to give some shadows on that. So that's him fully shaded, and I think he's still wet, but I think you can see he's starting to look a lot more poppy. He's standing out a lot better. So now we're finished with the shading, we're going to move on to the highlighting, starting with the white for re-shining up his eyes. Next we'll go on to the Survivor skin, and we're going to try and cover all the raised areas of his skin, just bringing the colour back from after we've added the ink. So trying to get all of his face, his cheekbones, his forehead, his hands, his palm, well not his palms, sorry, the backs of his hands and his fingers. And then we're going to mix in some white with the survivor skin, about 50-50% ratio. And then we're going to go back with the detail brush and just catch the very edges of all those places, like his lips and the edges of his eyes and his fingertips and his knuckles. We're going to use the same red as we did before, just to re-highlight up his cloth. And we'll use the same brown, the Beasty Brown by Vallejo again, just to highlight up all the non-crevices of all of his brown areas, so his shoulder pads, his staff, etc. Then we're going to use the Parasite Brown on the top of his staff, just to bring the colour back into that. We'll highlight the zombie skin colour again, just with normal zombie skin. So catching again, we're going through all the raised parts of his bands, the teeth on his bear claws, and the skull. We'll bring out the Claymore blade again, just to bring the shine back into his sword. Trying to get the edges of all the sides to be nice and shiny, leaving the bits that would be in shadow dark still. We'll use Stonewall Grey, which is my light grey from Vallejo, to highlight up all of his grey hair. So if you can see here, I'm using my dry brush, getting as little on it as possible, and just scraping it over the very raised edges of all of his hair. This is probably the longest bit of the highlighting, but as you can see, it's pretty effective. And now his hair's looking very deep and 3D, pops out quite well. I did forget to do his eyebrows, as I think I do on every single model, so I just used the fine detail brush just to catch the very edges of his eyebrows and touch up his beard where I'd missed a couple of bits. I'm also now going around with a fine detail brush, just catching all the edges. There's no raised bits on his arms and the bands, the straps around his wrists, so I'm just catching the edges there. I'm going to use my dead black, which is just a black, but it's by the Army Painter for the Zombicide, just to add in some pupils and just touch up the skull's eyes as well. As always, I'm going to use the moon, and as always, I'm going to say it wrong, the Morn Fang brown to do the base, as I do with all the Arcadia Quest models I've painted. So I'm picking up Orange Fire by Vallejo, and this is just to do the very edges of his robe, just to give it some highlights. And finally, I'm going to go back to the base just to finish up the model using the Agrelin Earth, which we apply as thickly as possible as normal, and then let that dry, and it cracks really nicely, giving a sort of deserty, muddy effect under the model. So that's going to be the end of this tutorial. It'll just show you what it looks like finally, as I always do. So please let me know below if A, Masmorra's something of interest to you guys, and B, whether you'd like to hear more of Katherine on the videos, and C, anything else you want to add. As always, if you liked the video, please do give us a thumbs up, and if you loved it, do subscribe. It's the only way I know you guys want me to keep making these videos. Thank you ever so much for watching.